You chose the C. Don't act surprised I chose something else. That's what Melissa said, eyes cold, arms folded, during a 90-second video call from my own living room. 2 hours later, the bank app confirmed. Our account was empty. So was our marriage. 2. My name is Lucas Grant. I'm 41 years old and I've spent the last 16 years sailing between continents and storm systems as chief engineer in the Merchant Navy. My world isn't filled with meetings and small talk. It's diesel, rust, salt, and silence. The kind of silence that stretches for days when you're 12 miles off the coast and the only sound is the hum of the engine you rebuilt with your own hands. I chose this life early, not because it was easy, but because I needed something stable, something mine. Melissa used to say she admired that about me, that I was the quiet kind of man women forget to appreciate until it's too late. Irony writes its own scripts, doesn't it? We met when I was 25, still new in the trade. She worked in a law firm, sharp, polished, magnetic in ways I never pretended to be. I fell fast. She liked the uniform, said I made her feel safe, and I did everything to live up to that. I paid off her student loans in our second year of marriage, changed my sailing rotation so I'd be home more often. When her mother got sick, I delayed a contract in South Korea just to be there during the hospital nights. She cried in my arms that week, told me I was her anchor. Maybe that's what hurt the most. I believed it. I missed anniversaries, sure, birthdays too, but not out of carelessness, out of duty. While other men were home scrolling on couches, I was 40 feet below deck at 3 a.m., fixing pressure valves to keep my crew alive and the paycheck flowing. Our life wasn't flashy, but it was paid. No debt, no late bills, just discipline. I left her with everything: the house, the passwords, the bank accounts, trust in its rawest form. And what did I come home to? A half-empty closet, a cleared account, and a man, 10 years younger, unemployed, still living with his aunt, eating off my plates, sleeping on my mattress. When I confronted her on that shaky Wi-Fi call, she didn't cry. She didn't even apologize, just shrugged. You were never really here, Lucas. I got tired of waiting. I didn't argue, I didn't shout. I ended the call, and I started thinking. Because if there's one thing the sea teaches you, it's this. When the storm hits, you don't scream. You secure the deck. 3, our life looks solid from the outside. Nice house in Savannah, white shutters, trimmed hedges. 2 cars, nothing fancy, but paid in full. A porch swing she picked out on a Sunday afternoon, back when we still did things together. Every time I came back from a voyage, I brought something with me. A carved wooden compass from Lisbon, a silk scarf from Tangier, tea leaves from Sri Lanka she never actually drank. I thought I was building memories. She was building distance. But I didn't see it. I told myself the silence was just routine, that marriages evolved, that love after 10 years didn't need to be loud. It just had to last. She started a garden. I helped her set up the beds, even though I hate yard work. She said she wanted to feel grounded. I smiled, kissed her forehead, and flew out 2 days later. Turns out she wasn't planting vegetables. She was planting her exit. 4. The signs were there, all of them, new routines. Melissa started going to the gym more, which wouldn't be strange if she ever came back sweaty. She wore perfume to the grocery store. Her phone, once left charging on the kitchen counter, was suddenly always in her purse, face down, silenced. She said she was reconnecting with herself, that she was journaling, healing. I wanted to believe her. So, eu fiquei quieto. She stopped calling while I was at sea. Used to be I'd get a video message every night, little updates, a smile, sometimes just her saying, "I miss you." Now, days of silence, followed by short replies like, "Sorry, busy day." I thought she was tired. I blamed myself. Maybe I'd been gone too long. Maybe I'd made the mistake of believing loyalty was enough. But there was one moment I'll never forget. I was docked in Marseille for engine maintenance. I called her, wasn't planned, just missed her voice. She answered late, hair done, makeup perfect. "Were you out?" I asked. She paused just long enough. Number Y. That why landed like a bullet. Defensive, sharp, wrong, and still. I let it go. Because when you're halfway across the world, you can't afford doubt. You swallow it. You focus on the work. You hold the ship together and hope your house is still a home. She started making passive comments about our life. Don't you ever get tired of living on a boat? Feels like I'm married to a ghost. Do you even know what day our anniversary is? I knew. I just didn't think I had to prove it anymore. I was 14 days into a rotation through the Gulf of Aden when it happened. The internet on board was weak that night. Storms had scrambled the satellite. Still, I managed to refresh the bank app. Just routine. Habit. The balance read $3.74. I blinked. Refreshed again. Same number. I checked the transfer log. Every cent. Savings, emergency fund. The backup we never touched. Gone. Moved into an account under a name I didn't recognize. Then a message came through from Melissa. You always knew this life came with risks. I'm just choosing mine now. Let's not make this ugly. No apology, no denial. She wasn't even hiding it. I closed the app, set the phone down, and smiled. Because what she didn't know was that I'd been raised by a fisherman who never trusted easy, who told me, never leave all your bait in one boat. So I hadn't. She didn't know about the account in my name only. The small property I bought 2 years ago under an LLC. The legal structure I put in place after she refused to sign the post-nup I asked for said it felt like I didn't trust her. She was right, I didn't, but I loved her anyway. Now, love was off the table. What remained was clarity and the quiet satisfaction of knowing she'd stolen everything except the one thing I'd never given away, control. I docked in Rotterdam 2 weeks later. Same steel boots, same duffel bag. But I wasn't the same man who'd left Savannah 3 months before. Something in me had clicked, or maybe just shut off. At O'Hare, waiting for my connection home, I got a call. It was Mr. Langston, a shipping magnate I'd met 6 years earlier during a dry dock inspection in Singapore. Back then, I helped him avoid a costly shutdown by diagnosing a sensor issue in under 10 minutes. He never forgot. I heard you're a free man, Lucas. Let's have lunch. I flew to Houston. No obligations, no wife waiting, just me, and a file folder full of the one thing Melissa had never valued, results. Langston offered me a position before the appetizer arrived. Fleet director, full autonomy, base salary 3 times what Blackridge ever paid. Plus one thing I hadn't had in years, a seat at the table. I took the weekend to think, rented a quiet place off the coast, sat with my own thoughts. No distractions, no tears. Meanwhile, back in Savannah, Melissa was spiraling. The money she transferred had been flagged. She'd gotten too greedy, moved too fast, and now the bank had frozen part of it, pending investigative review. Language I'd made sure was in place when I structured the joint account 2 years ago. She called me. First time since the message. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. We need to talk. This isn't what I wanted. Can we at least be fair? Fair? I sat on the porch and poured 2 fingers of bourbon, not in celebration, in peace. The lawyer I'd quietly hired during my last voyage had filed everything. The separation, the asset list, the LLC records. Clean, precise, undeniable. And Melissa? She learned that the house wasn't in both our names. It never had been. I'd purchased it through the same holding I used for the land my father left me. She'd signed the papers without reading them. She never asked. She was too busy decorating. Now she was out. Legally, logistically, emotionally. Langston called again. You in? I said yes, but not for the money, for the freedom, for the silence, for every man who ever gave everything and was told he was too distant while he kept the lights on and the roof steady. Melissa sent one last message. You really never loved me, did you? I didn't reply, because some lessons don't come with answers, only consequences. The first real crack came from her own lawyer. Melissa had hired some hotshot divorce attorney, the type that smiles like he's already won. Only, there wasn't much to win. You signed everything, he told her. Your name's not on the deed, not on the trust, not on the business account. She tried to argue, said she'd built that home too. But the law doesn't care how many curtains you picked out when the documents say otherwise. Next came the bank. She thought I wouldn't notice the offshore transfer attempts, but the account she tried to move the money into flagged for fraud-adjacent behavior, a little clause I slipped into our financial structure years ago in case of emergencies. I just never thought she'd be the emergency. Then the boyfriend, Josh. He was gone within a month. Turns out, men who move into another man's house rarely stick around when that house becomes a courtroom, and he definitely wasn't ready for a woman used to living off direct deposits. She messaged me again. This doesn't have to get uglier than it already is. I ignored it, not out of revenge, out of principle, because Melissa didn't just cheat, she underestimated. She thought distance meant indifference, that working offshore meant I wasn't paying attention, but I saw her the whole time. In patterns and silences, in the way trust slowly bends before it snaps. She tried to file a motion for alimony, denied. She claimed emotional distress, dismissed. Meanwhile, I was in Seattle onboarding my new team, building something clean, professional, durable, no drama, no distractions. The last I heard of her, she'd moved back in with her sister, tried to start over as a real estate agent, but the local circles talk. And the story, it got around. Not because I told it, but because collapse makes noise when it's built on ego. I never posted, never defended myself, because truth doesn't need press. It just waits. And eventually, it shows up. It was a message I wasn't supposed to see, sent from Melissa's sister, Ashley, to a mutual friend. Screenshotted, forwarded, no context needed. He's so boring, Ash. Always offshore, always tired. I felt like I was married to a blueprint. Josh made me feel alive. Lucas made me feel safe. And safety's not sexy. I stared at the screen for a while. Not because it hurt, that part had passed, but because it confirmed everything I'd already started to suspect. It was never about what I lacked. It was about what she craved. Attention, excitement, drama. Melissa had built a story in her head, a version of our marriage where she was the caged bird and I was the absent warden. She told her friends I abandoned her, that I chose machines over moments. She even told her therapist, a guy I paid for through our health plan, that she felt emotionally neglected. Neglected? I left hot meals frozen with labels before every trip. I scheduled my calls around her lunch breaks. I missed my own father's funeral to meet a cargo deadline that paid for her yoga teacher certification. And I did it without asking for credit, because that's what men like me do. We provide, we protect, and we get forgotten. But that screenshot, that was the real voice, the one behind the filters and the polite smiles. And it got worse. I found out Josh wasn't the first. There'd been another guy, 2 years prior, a coworker. Casual, she said. Just texting, nothing serious. But it was enough for her to make a burner email account, to save his contact under a fake name, to meet him in book club nights I never questioned. She played the role of the loyal wife while laying bricks for her exit, one secret at a time. Her sister said it best in one message. Lucas will never see it coming. He's too proud, too quiet. And they were right. I didn't see it coming, but I did feel it, in the silence between our phone calls. In the way she started saying I instead of we. In the way home stopped smelling like her perfume and started smelling like absence. She didn't just cheat on me. She rehearsed my replacement while smiling in my face. But what none of them expected was that the man they called boring had documented everything. The emails, the transfers, the burner account recovery logs, the shared drive activity she forgot to log out of. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted the truth to have a file name. And in the end, that file, not my fists, was what ended her case in court. My lawyer printed the screenshots. Melissa's face when they hit the table, that was the first time I saw her speechless. And in that moment, I realized some women leave because they're unhappy. Others, they leave because they thought you'd never find out. I didn't rebuild with noise. I rebuilt with discipline. No emotional posts, No tequila-fueled fresh start selfies. Just quiet work. Focused breath. Cold clarity. Houston felt like a clean slate. I rented a modest place outside the city with creaky floors and a porch that caught the morning sun just right. My first night there, I slept for 9 hours straight. First time in years. At Langston's firm, I was handed full control of the offshore logistics division. They didn't micromanage. They trusted, and I didn't waste it. I hired a lean team, all handpicked, not for their resumes, for their posture. I didn't want hungry egos. I wanted people who listened before they spoke. We rebuilt systems from scratch, fixed loopholes, tightened protocols, renegotiated routes with partners who hadn't been called in years. By the second quarter, we had increased efficiency by 28%, and not one system crash. But the real win? Respect. It came quietly, in forwarded emails, in silent nods at the end of meetings, in engineers who started calling me chief, not because I demanded it, but because I earned it. Outside of work, I kept it simple. I cooked for myself. I read. I called my mother more often. My daughter came to visit on a weekend. We made pancakes and talked about the future. She looked around the apartment and said, "It's peaceful here." I smiled. Peace isn't free. You have to earn it. One night I got a message from an old Blackridge colleague. "Man, we should have listened to you. They ran that place into the ground." I didn't reply. Not because I was cold, but because sometimes silence speaks louder than forgiveness. The email subject read, "We need your kind of leadership." It came from the executive board at Rains and Holt, a major shipping conglomerate that had just acquired 3 underperforming maritime logistics firms. Among them, Blackridge Maritime. Yes, that Blackridge. They weren't offering me a position. They were offering a kingdom that had burned itself to the ground and asking me to rebuild it. I didn't say yes right away. I took a full week, spent it walking trails, cooking simple meals, and going offline. Not because I needed time to feel important, but because I needed to know, was I still doing this to prove something? Or was I doing it to build something better? When I finally sat down with their CEO, I didn't dress up. I didn't rehearse. I spoke the same way I always had, and slowly, clearly, without apology. I don't do corporate games. I don't do second guessing. If I lead this, I lead it fully. You want clean systems, honest teams, and long-term results? Then stay out of my way. He nodded once. We've had enough talkers. We're ready for a builder. I drew up a one-page document titled Non-Negotiables. Full operational control. Complete authority to hire and fire. No interference from corporate unless legal. Budget autonomy. Zero tolerance for office politics. He signed it that same day. And just like that, the same man who'd been replaced, ghosted, and discarded for being too distant was now handed the keys to the fleet. I didn't post about it, didn't tell Melissa, didn't update LinkedIn, because real power doesn't shout. It walks back into the room, calm, certain, and starts giving orders. I walked back into the same building, same parking lot, same fingerprint scanner, same elevator that once carried me down the day Melissa emptied the account and my employer called me redundant. Only this time, the badge was mine, and the top floor was waiting. Blackridge had been swallowed by Rains and Holt. Their systems were a mess. Their staff, demoralized, disoriented. Half didn't know who was in charge anymore, until I walked in. The lobby receptionist looked up like she'd seen a ghost. "Mr. Grant?" I nodded, no explanation needed. Upstairs, I stepped into the same conference room where I was once replaced by a younger, cheaper version of myself. That version? Colin, now seated quietly at the table, avoiding my eyes. I didn't gloat. I didn't speak of the past. I simply opened my laptop and said, "Let's begin." The old leadership sat in silence while I outlined the new structure. I wasn't rude. I wasn't theatrical. But every line in my plan was clear. We're not doing it your way anymore. On my way out, one of the remaining execs, the same guy who once told me to embrace digital disruption, caught up to me in the hallway. "Lucas, I have to say, this is quite the comeback." I looked at him, calm, measured. "It's not a comeback. I never left. You just stopped listening. And then I walked away. No victory lap, no press release, because true victory doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be permanent. I never cared about legacy, but these days I think about what stays after I'm gone. Every Friday I host a closed-door workshop for the young engineers. No slides, no scripts, just lessons, the kind they don't teach in school. We talk about systems, sure, but we also talk about people, about how to protect what you build, how to see betrayal coming without becoming paranoid, how to walk through fire and not come out bitter, just smarter. One kid asked me last week, "Chief, what's the most valuable thing you've ever built?" I didn't even blink. The ability to walk away without losing who I am, because revenge was never the point. Resilience was, and now I get to pass that on. Quietly, intentionally, permanently.